Hey, Slick Talkers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. And I know that if you love this show, you'll also love my morning show called Good Morning Hospitality with my co-hosts Michael Golden and Brandy Canali, as we spend 30 minutes every Monday morning to dive into the industry's top latest news and trending topics. So go check it out on wherever you find your podcasts at Good Morning Hospitality. And you can live stream with us on Monday mornings on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Now, I hope you enjoy this episode.
Yeah, hospitality has been a passion of mine, since growing up. I think I've always been passionate about architecture, design, spaces, finding the best coffee shop. Almost went to school for architecture, but hospitality kind of manifested itself in appreciation for hotels and quality. And that's where I found myself today and why I started Locale.
Welcome to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast where we discuss all things hospitality, hotels, and business. You can find us online at slicktalkthepodcast.com and on every podcast listening platform.
What's up, all my Slick Talkers? This episode is brought to you by my friends at Hostfully. Now, these are the days where enough is enough with managing multiple calendars for your properties in order just to make sure you don't get double booked. And not having a website for your guests to get to know your story and book direct? You can stop stressing, at least a little bit, and check out my friends at Hostfully. Hostfully was created by hosts for hosts, and they understand the importance of centralizing operations, inboxes, calendars, and of course, keeping up with the times and the industry data. You can go to hostfully.com, use my code SlickTalk20 to get access to their digital guidebooks and their property management software. I use them as well, and I love the simplicity of their product. Now, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now sit back and enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, and I'm your host, Will Slickers. Today is a special day, as always, because we have an amazing guest on the show, and today joining me is Nitesh Gandhi, who is the CEO and founder of Locale. So, Nitesh, welcome to Slick Talk, my man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, it's been great getting to know you behind the scenes. Of course, all my audience members know that I usually have a pre-chat before recording, and just getting to know your story a little bit has been really awesome and exciting to see. So I just want to jump right in with you. Tell us about where you got started, what your background is, and what are the moments leading up today where you started Locale and where we are.
Yeah, totally. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks again for having me. For me, the road to Locale it's been a long time in the making. Actually, I almost thought I was going to go to architecture school in high school. Just have always been passionate about design, buildings, and found myself actually going pre-professional and realizing after 5 years of working as a management consultant that I was just missing something. And it took a minute, but after a lifelong of travel, especially as a consultant, and hitting the road globally, realized that hotels was just a passion of mine that I wanted to explore professionally, and decided to get my MBA and focus on real estate. So I was at Wharton for a couple of years. This is back in 2012, and decided to not go back to consulting, but take an internship with a hospitality group in Philadelphia, Hershey Hospitality. Worked with their boutique collection of hotels. And, it was the start of a path that took me down hotel asset management, managing some of the largest hotel brands in the world for a few years, and ultimately to Austin, Texas, where I got into short-term rentals for a year with Oasis, and found myself wanting to do my own thing in hospitality.
Well, I find it interesting because you started out as consultant to then intern, and then you started from, which is I find rare. You and I are, I find, like in the hotel, hospitality, short-term rental industry, are kind of rare breed where we come from hotels and then we segue into short-term rentals. Usually people stick with one or the other. They don't, at least I would say before 2020, let's say that before 2020, it was rare that people were like, oh yeah, I was a hotel manager for 10 years and I became a short-term rental operator or whatever, versus now where we're seeing that blend kind of happen a lot more. So tell me about that. Like, what was so intriguing for you to, it's going to be a two-part question here. Going from consultant to intern, what was that transition like? And then from hotels to short-term rental, what was your thought process and thinking behind that when you came looking at comparing the two, hotel type of property and then short-term rental type property?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll say that, to frame it all, back when I was living in New York as a consultant, and this was, 20 to date myself, 2008, 2009, when I actually decided I was going to go to business school, I put my apartment on Airbnb, and that was 15 years ago now or something. I must have been one of the early adopters. And so I've always been drawn, I think there's something about short-term rentals and Airbnb and kind of sharing your space that, I've always been drawn to. I made sure my space was spark and clean, took the best photos. And, that was personally for me, that was motivating. And I think I started realizing doing all that, the reason I've always been attracted to hospitality, I was on a good path in consulting, going to Wharton. It could have had a pretty lucrative career had I gone back into consulting.
Yeah.
But, at some point you find your passion, you realize that now is as good a time as ever to hit reset. And I didn't know anything about hotels other than just my, being a traveler like everybody else. I didn't know anything about hospitality professionally. And, starting at the front desk and working my way up wasn't really an option, kind of approaching my 30s. But, interning with one of the most successful hotel REITs in the country who happened to be based in the same city I was, working with their CEO on their boutique hotel collection.
Yeah.
I couldn't really pass that up because for me, it was a way to kind of reset and almost take a short circuit into getting into the industry I've always wanted to be in. And so that's why I kind of ditched the consultancy, said goodbye to all my Starwood points that I've accumulated for 5 years. And that's what led me to, ultimately realize it's what I wanted to do. Internship's a great way to just try something out before, taking a full-time job and regretting it.
Yeah.
But it was very clear to me after that summer that, post MBA, I wanted to find a job in the world of real estate and hotels and learn the business. Yeah,
I was going to say, and that's a rare opportunity to be able to kind of get that mentorship right out the gate with a CEO, and that's, got a high-end collection of boutique properties. Like, that's, I think, an opportunity most front desk agents or even managers or directors of room and revenue would kill for. So the fact that you were able to get into that transition so quick and just kind of start out the gate with a really strong foot shows a lot too as well. So I think it's pretty mentorship. I just find it was rare. Like for me, when I was a front desk agent, it's like, all right, we have 500 check-ins today. I don't have time to have you in the office and talk to you about X, Y, and Z things. You got to get these 500 check-ins done. And so to have that, it's pretty sweet.
I would say I felt lucky also because, hospitality is one of those businesses people grow up in, usually. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of outsiders come in, halfway through their career, but I think the mentorship paired with, people, it's hospitality, of course they're going to welcome new people in, and I think you're spot on. The mentorship was key there.
Well, you also mentioned Oasis Collection, and we've had Parker Stanberry on the show before and love Parker and what they've built. So kind of tell us about that. So you put your apartment on Airbnb when you were doing this internship, correct? Yeah. And then...
Yeah, it was a little before. And then I went to go work for a hotel investment firm out in California for a couple of years in San Francisco. And that's when I really got to know the hotel business. And I think after a couple of years of doing that, and my wife and I, we're from Texas, from Houston. She went to school in Austin, and so we were kind of focused on, all right, let's get to Austin. And this was 6-7 years ago.
Okay.
Everybody's seems like everybody's focused on getting to Austin now, but it was we got here, and I no job, nothing, knowing that I just kind of worked in hotels, was trying to figure out. I was close to joining the team at HomeAway. They're based in Austin at the time.
Yeah.
It's now Verbo, Expedia and all that. But I also got to know Oasis, and they were looking at launching in Texas, and Parker's from Texas, and I think Austin, soft spot for him.
Yeah.
So I got to know the team there, and realized that working with them would give me exposure to the other side of hospitality, short-term rentals, which I had as obviously a host.
Yeah.
On Airbnb, but I kind of learned the hotel business, but I really hadn't learned the other side of hospitality and accommodations. And so that was the main motivator, was, learn the business, really liked Parker and the team, thought they were building something pretty special. And having the opportunity to launch their presence in Texas, I thought would be a good way for me also to kind of look under the hood and learn more about the short-term rental business.
Well, what stood out to you from the hotel world, moving into the short-term rental world, from managing, assets as a hotel portfolio manager, but then also as a host? That's what I'm kind of curious about, because I think a lot of people, we see a lot of, if you're on Clubhouse or, these Facebook groups all over the place, a lot of people are actually into more like the real estate investment side of the short-term rental industry, just like the hotel side. There's that, whole segment of people that are just looking at real estate assets and management. But then there's that side of the host where you were for your apartment and stuff, where you just want a clean place. You want someone, to have a comfortable stay. You want good pictures, so that way you get, good ROI on your nightly rate and all that good stuff. So what was like that transition like for you, going in between like both asset management, but then a host style?
Yeah, it was eye-opening. Some of the hotels that I was managing had 800, rooms. I mean, they were massive, big box hotels where, consistencies and I hate to say cookie cutter, because, the hotel industry deserves more credit than that. But, there's hundreds of rooms and, 20, 30 room types, but you have to be consistent. It's a massive operation with hundreds of employees.
Yep.
To deliver this consistent experience, right? And that's what people expect in hotels, is consistency.
Yeah.
You kind of know what you're going to get. It's safe, it's reliable. And I think, in spending at least the first few weeks at Oasis and trying to launching the business in Austin, for example, in the first 2 months, I brought on almost 80 homes onto the platform, and had a lot of conversations with hosts. And this was, a few years after I was obviously hosting in New York. But it's extremely personal. Every home had a different owner with different standards. And so consistency was tough.
Yeah.
But you're working with a lot of primary and secondary homes. People were attached to their guests. They were attached to their reviews, and, every home had its own story. And I think that's what makes a successful host. And, Oasis was trying to overlay a consistent brand experience on top of pretty individual homes. And that, was already one of the tough challenges I saw, just on how you kind of marry a hotel with short-term rentals. If you're trying to do it at scale and bring consistency, it's tough for a vacation rental manager and brand to do that when every home is different. Every owner is different. And, it was really eye-opening, and I think learned a lot on just how to kind of scale an operation and try to, find the middle ground between both. And I mean, effectively that was part of the reason why I started Locale. And I think that's what a lot of these hybrid, apart hotel service department type players are kind of trying to tackle, is that consistency and quality with the short-term rental, obviously.
Yeah. That was just leading into my next question, which is great. So for us, like I think I told you I have a vacation rental management company too, and we're very, very new, very small. But like you said, every home is different. But there are certain things we can do as a company in order, like as we're bringing on owners, and I've had this conversation multiple times with multiple owners, same conversation over and over. But it's like implementing some kind of basic standard, saying the linens need to be white. We need to have X amount of par per linen and per towel and all this other stuff. We want remote, keypad doors and all this other stuff. So for you guys with Locale, how do you go about that? Creating that consistency, but brand standard, but then also adding that flair of uniqueness. So what's been like that secret sauce for you?
Definitely. And you're right. I mean, every home is different. And the reality is every apartment building is different. And a lot of the apartments that we work with are different. So those challenges are still there, but you can overlay a brand and consistency there. And so for us and how I started thinking about it early at Locale was, the basics, right? Consistent products, from linens to bath amenities to coffees and teas and, the same dishware and bringing consistency as a manager, especially since we were investing in the apartments themselves, to be able to, bulk order something and have the flexibility to replace it across various apartments is critical. So there was obviously consistency in product and something I've always been passionate about. Like I've always been drawn to the boutique hotels to kind of, high quality stays. And that doesn't necessarily mean luxury. Quality doesn't have to be a 5-star experience. You could have a quality 4-star experience also. But every independent hotel is different. But again, it has those consistency in product, consistency in service. If you're offering 24/7 check-in and service, someone can text you at any time. That needs to be consistent no matter what apartment you're checking into or what city you're staying at. I think the design and most nearly all of our 1-bedrooms have sleeper sofas in them. We made that decision really early on to just, I have a family. I traveled in Europe a few years ago. We stayed at apart hotels. There's just something really valuable about having various sleeping areas, especially when you have kids. And so we made the decision pretty early on that, look, most of our apartments are going to have sleeper sofas and we're going to be able to accommodate, a family of 4 pretty easily, even if they just want to book a 1-bedroom. But, offering, that as a brand standard is important. So we really went through kind of the furniture to the design, to the decor, to the products, to how you check in. And so many of those things can be kind of thought of the same way, even if, the building happens to be in downtown Austin or in Music Row in Nashville. Doesn't matter. You can hold those things consistent. And I think what we found too is that, early on we established a presence in Austin and Houston and Dallas. We were getting a lot of folks traveling between the 3 cities, often on road trips, weekday business travelers. And they really, once they had a successful stay with us early on in Austin, they were seeking us out in Houston and appreciated that it was the same number they were texting, it was the same lock that they were using, smart lock. And they really didn't have to think about it. And then that's when it kind of dawned on me too, that consistency is key if the experience is just made easy.
Yeah. Well, I love that you just said that. That literally gave me like goosebumps. Consistency is key. I love it. No, that's really cool. So I have a question for you focused on, because I'm focused like on whole home rental. I've never really gotten to the multifamily space other than with like a consulting project here and there. But my question to you is, so with COVID, what happened with you guys in the beginning of 2020 when kind of the whole world shut down? And then also, did that, like, were you guys on a master lease model? Were you at a rev share model? And what's been like the changes for that? Because like you said, you're investing in these apartments, especially if you're furnishing them, you're designing them, you're bringing that brand standard. But then another question to me would be for the tech, like how has that tech side been built for you guys? What were some early on stages that got you guys to where you are today to enable like that smooth experience for the guest?
Yeah. Well, on the first bit, COVID was an impact. There's no doubt about it. Just like it impacted every hotel, every vacation rental, every company really. We had built the company via a master lease model prior to COVID. And, the plan, I would say, coming especially from the hotel industry, master leases do exist in the hotel industry. I mean, people don't really know that, but the reality is a lot of brands and operators will master lease and overlay. I mean, they have years and thousands of, hundreds of thousands of rooms and data points to, I think, pretty credibly make that calculation, big balance sheets. And so it's different from a startup, obviously, master leasing sometimes. But the model is used in hospitality, leases are in restaurants, and they're everywhere.
Yep.
And so the goal was always to kind of control our domain by being the lessee, growing the business. But exploring different paths, whether it was going asset heavy in the real estate itself or pulling back and becoming a brand and a management company, because those, in the industry, that's where the highest multiples are. Those are the most profitable companies, and the asset's already there. So why not overlay on top of it?
100%.
And so I think it was always a means to an end. COVID accelerated the transition for us, just like it did most of our peers, not all. Yeah. And so, we were a few hundred apartments. We were on master leases across, 6 or 7 cities. COVID hit, we pulled back pretty dramatically, our unit count. And, we took it as an opportunity to, really have the conversation with all of our partners that now is the time for us to transition more into a revenue share management agreement where, we think we could really generate more for you under this model than a typical lease. And if you give us the time to prove it out, we will. We're pretty confident about it. And I think the benefit of, we haven't raised as much money as most of our peers. I've generally been kind of always a fan of slower and steady growth. For the first year and a half, we were bootstrapped. So, didn't start the company by raising money. And I think the result is we've developed really strong relationships with our partners, with our landlord partners, the managers of our buildings. And so kind of in April and May was able to sit down and have kind of real conversations with all of the buildings, all of the owners about how we can kind of get through this together. And so I think it kind of helped us being a little bit smaller and leaner, and we didn't have to, it's hurt a few of the companies that were larger that having 1,000 of those conversations is pretty difficult. For us having 20, we were able to come to kind of hybrid agreements with our partners, get some breaks through the first few months of COVID when it was pretty rough. And then as things started to pick back up, was able to really generate true value for these guys under our rev share model. And, the reality is even at the end of last year, we've been driving more revenue to landlords under our management agreement and rev share than we were on market rate leases. And as a result, we've increased the amount of those agreements we've done. And so it's been pretty eye-opening for them and for us. But I think COVID, silver lining has been for us to kind of accelerate the transition to the asset light model and still provide a lot of value for our kind of multifamily landlord partners, but also our guests who haven't really seen a single kind of hiccup in the, nothing's changed on the experience. And in fact, I think they've appreciated it more in COVID, but they, whether it's a master lease or a management model, nothing has changed. Our service scores have been high, and the guest experience is still fundamentally the same. And I think that's been the most important thing, that the business structure doesn't necessarily need to impact the guest experience. And I think, in a way, it's been stronger because now we're working side by side with our property managers and the leasing office to ensure a great experience, because if we do, we share the revenue. So I think it's worked out pretty well. But that's COVID was it was something else. And, I hate to say past tense because we're all still dealing with it, but I think we've adapted pretty well.
I do too. That's pretty inspirational, to be honest. Just to hear you say, the business model shouldn't, impact the guest experience. That's I think a lot of people don't say that, like they've never said it that way, but I think they, definitely try to like ensure that that doesn't happen. But just to hear those words, the business model, master lease, rev share shouldn't impact the guest experience. That's pretty awesome. When it comes to the tech side of stuff, though, you guys so you said it was bootstrapped, so I'm assuming you were using some, other softwares and tech enabled amenities to help, guys get your brand and your business operating. So are you building out your own tech now, or is this something that you guys are white labeling? What's that look like for a tech enabled / hospitality focused company?
Yeah, we've always kind of gone down the third party tech route, and I'll be the first to admit it that for us at a small stage, having been bootstrapped, to build our tech from day one, obviously not the highest and best use of raising capital, especially when there's such good technology out there. And we used early days, we went down the path of vacation rental software, and coming from Oasis and others, felt like that was the right time. As things have become more sophisticated, Airbnb tapped into major distribution channels. We were able to tap into more hotel oriented software because when you're running 30 or 40 apartments in a building with 3 room types, you really need the power of a hotel platform to be able to fully monetize that and do it efficiently. So we've gone we really use a hybrid of hotel oriented tools and vacation rental oriented tools. I'd say there's probably like 10 core systems in our ecosystem, or 10 vendors or brands that we use in our ecosystem to kind of power the Locale business and platform. It's connected in a unique way that I know we do. As of now, we haven't really built our own technology around that, but it is something that we're actively exploring. I think the focus has been on, first and foremost, ensuring a phenomenal guest experience, focusing on our service scores, driving repeat business, ensuring high occupancy, high nightly rates. And, I think once you do that, then investing in the right technology to support and augment that is important, rather than blowing millions of dollars in technology. Ultimately, that may not be the right technology. 100%. And so that's how I kind of thought about it from the beginning. And we, with COVID, we leaned up and we became a pretty small team again. And so, I'm glad in a way that we've been nimble and been able to use the latest and greatest technology, because there's been a ton of innovation in the space, even in the last 4 years. The tools that exist now versus 4 years ago, it's night and day. What you can do with your phone and kind of, it's incredible. And I'm glad that we've been kind of able to pick and choose the best players to help us build the best ecosystem, rather than kind of wipe the slate clean every time and try to rebuild it every 6 months. Yeah,
that's good. Good point. Now I was actually going to ask, because like I said, I'm very single family home oriented versus multifamily. So with COVID and the beginning, I'm sure, like you said, everyone had an impact. But when you now have, let's say, 30, 40, 50 apartments, or units in an apartment building, what's the guest like? Do you think guests were more hesitant in the beginning to get into a space that's more shared occupied building versus kind of like hotels? Everyone didn't want to be in the lobby and don't want to wait in line to check in and all this other stuff, because hotels were slower to recover. Did you guys see that type of same pattern, or since that you were more of a self check-in model, they didn't have to wait for the keys in a lobby and a shared space in an elevator with all these other people? Did that impact you guys at all, or no?
Yeah, the first month everybody was scared, right? But I think very quickly the product of kind of service department showed its strength in the privacy of the space, the comfort, the washer dryer in the room, the kitchen, so you can cook at home. All of our buildings have interior access. I think one might have exterior, but no crowded lobbies, no crowded elevators. So the product, I think, was powerful in the safety and comfort it provided. And very quickly we capitalized on that messaging and story. And I think our guests naturally realized that. And so, we've been outperforming the hotel industry probably, 3x over the last year, but that's kind of par for what I think a lot of the players in our space and extended stay category in general have kind of enjoyed. And I think we were uniquely positioned to do that. So I think, and that's still true. People, I think, still are, now that they've gotten more exposure to alternative accommodations like this, are excited to have, 600-700 square feet to kind of work remotely from and kind of sit on an actual desk, make some coffee in the kitchen, sit on a desk and work, and, go back into the bedroom, take a nap or whatever. You can have a very kind of different experience than a 300 square foot hotel room. And that's just the reality of kind of urban accommodations. Different for resorts, different for vacation rentals, no doubt. But in the urban space, I think our product has really shined. And that's helped us kind of outperform over the last year vis-a-vis hotels and other urban accommodations.
I love that. That's awesome. That's really cool. Well, I always like to ask this question to all my guests as we get ready to wrap up the episode is, what's one piece of advice, a lesson you've learned, anything that you're currently, something that's driving you today? What's that one thing that you would just give any listener that's listening to this episode, and one thing that they could take away from this episode in general? Doesn't have to be anything specific, but I always like to give that opportunity open.
Yeah, I think, over the last year, it's obviously COVID shook a lot of things up. And I think there is something to be said about sticking to your guns. And if you've created a great experience and a great product and, it gets tough for a month or so, believing in that, I think is important. And yeah, it's important to be nimble, but it's also important to have faith in kind of what you're doing and not try to, be impacted too much by the noise around you. And I think, in many ways, we could have closed up shop, could have just thrown in the towel, said, oh, well, we've got all these leases, we're done. We've got 2 months of runway now. I think we stuck to our guns, had the tough conversations and persevered. And that kind of genuine, relentless focus on believing in what you're doing, people will respond favorably to that. And they're drawn to that. So for me, I think that's what helped get us through the last year. And now in a position where we could kind of regrow the company and, have a lot of optionality now. So stick to your guns, I think, is a really important thing. Especially when trying to build a business and kind of do something, new and innovative.
Yeah, I love that. That's super good. Well, where can I obviously always tag everything in the show notes so all the listeners can find easy access to Locale, to you, to all that good stuff. But where's the number one spot people can find out more, whether it's your website, your LinkedIn, you name it?
Yeah, I can go to locale.com or follow us on Instagram, stay with Locale. It's like Facebook, Instagram's the popular thing nowadays, right? No, but stay with Locale is our username on most of the social media channels, locale.com, if they want to check out the website. And happy to email us anytime, hello@locale.com, and we'll respond.
Awesome. Well, you heard it, Slick Talkers. Go ahead, check out all the show notes check out all the links in the show notes below. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And Nitesh, thank you so much for being on Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast.
Thank you so much for listening. We love your support and want to provide the best we can to all our listeners. So please find us online, social media, and on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. I could not be more thankful that you chose my podcast to listen to today. Now, I also couldn't be more thankful for the amazing partners and sponsors I have for the show. We have hostfully.com, noiseaware.com, and safely.com, and you can check out more about my sponsors on the Slick Talk website, where I have the sponsors and partners page. Now, thank you for tuning in, and enjoy another episode. What's up, everybody? If you've gotten this far into the episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, then you are amazing, and thank you so much for tuning in. We want to send you two places really quickly. If you can, check out the show notes and click the hospitality.fm link. Check out all of our other shows on the podcast network. And don't forget, if you have someone that you want to hear on the podcast, then fill out the guest fill out form so that way we can get them on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy another episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast.